Welcome back to my channel, where we ask what truly unfolds when unbreakable determination collides headfirst with merciless violence, because at AEW Worlds End, Kyle Fletcher didn't just face Jon Moxley in a wrestling match, he was thrown into a trial of endurance, pain, and survival that tested every limit a competitor can have, and what followed became one of the most haunting conclusions in the history of the Continental Classic, a moment that went far beyond wins and losses and instead exposed the raw truth of what it takes to stand across the ring from a man like Moxley. And this wasn't simply another contest on a stacked card, this was a brutal examination of spirit, resolve, and the cost of refusing to quit. So welcome once again to Ring Rumble, the place where hard-hitting analysis meets elite storytelling and where the moments that truly define professional wrestling are broken down with care, intensity, and respect. Because if you thrive on chaos, legacy, and the kind of pressure that only exists between the ropes, then you are exactly where you need to be, as the setting for the Continental Classic semi-final at World's End promised violence before the bell even rang, because nothing about this matchup was ever destined to be ordinary. On one side stood Kyle Fletcher, the prodigy representing the Don Callis family, a young and explosive athlete overflowing with potential, hunger, and the need to prove that his rise was not hype but inevitability, a competitor who had spent his career sharpening his tools for moments like this, knowing that standing tall against a name like Moxley could change everything. And on the opposite side waited Jon Moxley, a man forged in conflict, the embodiment of controlled savagery, carrying with him the cold, efficient dominance of the Death Riders, a veteran who doesn't just win matches but survives wars and leaves wreckage behind. And from the instant the opening bell sounded, it was clear that this was less a sporting contest and more a fight for dominance, a clash where technique and strategy were secondary to resilience and the willingness to absorb punishment. Because Fletcher refused to bow to Moxley's reputation, he didn't hesitate or second-guess himself, instead choosing to meet violence with violence, answering every strike with one of his own and forcing the former AEW World Champion into territory that few have ever dragged him into. And as the match unfolded, the atmosphere inside the arena shifted, the crowd sensing that something unexpected was happening, because this was not supposed to be competitive in this way. Fletcher was not supposed to push Moxley this far. Yet there he was, matching him blow for blow, countering offense, escaping danger, and proving that his confidence was not misplaced. And still Jon Moxley does not crack easily. His entire career has been built on absorbing pain and turning it into fuel. And as the match escalated toward its climax, the feeling in the building grew heavier, the realization setting in that someone was going to have to endure something terrible for this to end. And when Moxley finally connected with the first Death Rider DDT, the arena collectively braced for the inevitable conclusion, because that move has ended countless matches and careers. The referee dropped to the mat, the count began, 1-2, and then Kyle Fletcher kicked out, sending shockwaves through the crowd and disbelief through the air, because this was survival instinct in its purest form. Fletcher refusing to let the moment end there, refusing to allow his story to close without one more stand, and with whatever strength he had left, he dragged himself back to his feet, every motion a scream of defiance, every strike thrown with the understanding that he was running on nothing but adrenaline and willpower, his body screaming for rest while his mind demanded resistance. And for a fleeting moment it looked like sheer determination might be enough, but standing across from Jon Moxley, heart alone is rarely sufficient, and Moxley answered that defiance the only way he knows how, by doubling down on destruction, delivering a second Death Rider that drove Fletcher into the canvas with finality. Yet even then Fletcher's refusal did not vanish, because even as his body betrayed him he tried to rise once more, and that refusal to stay down, that unwillingness to submit to the inevitable, ultimately sealed his fate, because Moxley saw it, recognized it, and transitioned without hesitation into the Bulldog Choke, a move designed not for spectacle but for control, a quiet, suffocating hold that drains resistance and leaves no room for escape. And there was no panic in Moxley's eyes, no wasted motion, only cold precision as he cinched in the hold and applied relentless pressure. Fletcher fought with everything he had left, his hands searching for leverage, his body twitching as seconds stretched into eternity, but slowly the movement faded, the fight drained away, and the referee was left with no choice but to stop the match, the bell ringing as Kyle Fletcher passed out, not pinned, not submitted in the traditional sense, but overwhelmed and rendered unconscious by Jon Moxley's unyielding brutality. And in that moment the meaning of the match became crystal clear, because this was not just a victory for Moxley, it was a declaration, a reminder to the entire locker room and the world watching that he thrives in chaos, that he excels not when things are clean or predictable but when they descend into survival. And at the same time it was a defining moment for Kyle Fletcher, because even in defeat he proved beyond doubt that he belongs on the biggest stage, that he can stand across from the most dangerous men in the industry and refuse to fold, that his future is not a question of if but when, and World's End became a testament to what professional wrestling can be at its best, a story told through pain, resilience and the brutal honesty of physical conflict, where survival favors the most dangerous man in the ring, and as the dust settled it was Jon Moxley who moved forward, but Kyle Fletcher who earned respect. And if you found this breakdown compelling, if you appreciate wrestling as more than moves and results but as stories carved through struggle, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more elite wrestling content, because this is Ring Rumble, where every match tells a story and every story hits hard. And as the echoes of the final bell faded into the background, the weight of what had just transpired lingered heavily over the arena, because matches like this do not simply end when the referee signals for the bell, they live on in the expressions of the wrestlers, the silence between commentary words, and the collective understanding of the audience that they have just witnessed something rare, something uncomfortable, something real, and Jon Moxley standing over the fallen Kyle Fletcher was not a moment of celebration but one of cold acknowledgement, a visual reminder that survival at this level demands sacrifices that few are willing or able to make, because Moxley did not raise his arms in triumph or soak in the crowd's reaction. Instead he looked down at Fletcher with the expression of a man who has been exactly where his opponent now lay, broken but not defeated in spirit, and that subtle detail mattered, because it reinforced the truth that this was not about ego or dominance alone, this was about proving who could endure the longest when there was nothing left to give, and Kyle Fletcher's body told the story of a man who had given everything, every ounce of energy drained, every opportunity seized, and though he did not walk away victorious, he walked away transformed, because moments like this redefine careers, they carve identities that cannot be manufactured through promos or victories over lesser opponents, and as medical staff checked on Fletcher and the crowd offered a mix of applause and stunned silence, the respect was unmistakable, because wrestling fans recognize authenticity when they see it, and what Fletcher displayed was not just toughness, but a refusal to abandon his belief in himself, even when the odds were stacked impossibly high. And for Jon Moxley, this match added another chapter to an already legendary resume, one that continues to grow not through championships alone, but through wars that etch his name deeper into the soul of the industry, because Moxley's legacy is not defined by being the best technical wrestler or the most polished performer, it is defined by his ability to drag opponents into deep water and see who can breathe the longest, and at World's End, he once again proved that when the situation becomes dire, when pain eclipses strategy and instinct overrides planning, he remains unmatched, and the Continental Classic itself benefited from this encounter, because tournaments thrive on moments that elevate their prestige, and this semi-final did exactly that by reminding everyone that advancement is not guaranteed through skill alone, it must be earned through suffering, and as the narrative of the tournament moved forward, this match became the measuring stick by which others would be judged, because anyone watching knew that if they wanted to stand atop this competition, they would need to be prepared to give more than they ever had before, and beyond the immediate implications, the ripple effects of this battle extended into the broader landscape of AEW, because Kyle Fletcher's performance forced conversations to change. No longer was he simply a promising talent aligned with a powerful faction, he was now a proven competitor who could go toe-to-toe with one of the most feared men in wrestling and refuse to break, and that kind of credibility cannot be taken away, it can only grow. While for Moxley, this match reinforced his role as the ultimate gatekeeper of violence, the man who separates those who want to be great from those who are willing to endure what greatness demands. And in the weeks and months that follow, this encounter will be referenced not just as a result, but as a lesson, a reminder that in professional wrestling, the most powerful stories are told not through dominance but through resistance, through the struggle to remain standing when everything in your body demands surrender. And that is why World's End will be remembered not just for who advanced, but for what was proven, because Kyle Fletcher proved he belongs among the elite, and Jon Moxley proved once again that when the world descends into chaos, he does not just survive it, he thrives within it, and that contrast is what makes wrestling compelling, the clash between rising ambition and hardened experience, between hope and inevitability, and as fans, we are drawn to these moments because they reflect something universal, the idea that even in defeat, there can be growth, respect and purpose. And as Suplex Saga continues to break down these defining encounters, this match will stand as a reminder of why we watch, why we invest, and why we remember, because every once in a while, a match transcends entertainment and becomes a statement, and at AEW World's End, that statement was written in pain, resilience, and the unrelenting truth that survival is never guaranteed, it is earned one breath.